run. I never was a runner. I never will be a runner. I just don't run. As a kid, I ran over to like the Shorewood Village Bakery to eat a Long John. And then I ran over to Baskin Robbins to get 2 scoops of daiquiri ice. But other than that, I only ran as a means of escape. I ran away from Jeremiah, my brother, because he was gonna tackle me and fart on my head. And I ran away from the police because they were gonna arrest me. So I don't run, but I pretended to be a runner 7 or so years ago for a brief period of time. Katie and I were living together on the corner of Henry Clay and Santa Monica. And one day, I'm laying on the couch, like, you know, with the remote and the blanket and Lifetime TV. And Katie comes in and she reminds me that we've been invited to this kickoff party for the American Diabetes Association. And, you know, I'm like, it's Jacqueline Smith on Lifetime. Totally moaning and groaning, because I know it's going to be one of those events where they give you some hors d'oeuvres and a couple drinks, and then they hit you up for a big wad of cash. You know what I'm talking about, right? But our mom, Terry, was an amputee diabetic, so, you know, you had to drag yourself off the couch and go to this thing. So we get out there, and it's somewhere out near Mayfair, and they have all these tables set up about, you know, with information about what the ADA does, and there's a table on education and advocacy and awareness, and there's this thing called Team Diabetes. And Team Diabetes is a program where the participant can get a free trip to places like Hawaii, Bermuda, Ireland, Rome, you know, some other kind of boring places like Duluth and Phoenix, and a free trip. And all you gotta do is raise $5,000, and you gotta run a marathon. So I'm standing there and I'm looking at the information, and I'm eating like my 40th sugar-free sugar cookie. And I'm thinking, I can totally do this. I can run a marathon. And I look at Katie and I'm like, how long is a marathon? Anyway. And she gives me like this frightened, doubtful look. And I was like, oh, never mind. This is just details. I don't need to know. I want to go to Ireland. You know, Ireland sounds like a ton of fun. I want to kiss the Blarney Stone, and I want to buy a sweater, and I want to drink a couple gallons of Guinness. So I'm going to do this. Now this kickoff event was in like, I think it was in the end of May, excuse me, and the marathon was in October in Dublin. And I'm like, 5 months, piece of cake. Now mind you, I had not run a block since senior year in high school when the Sheboygan County Police Department busted up a beach party, and I had to run through the woods with a 12-pack of Miller Lite in one hand and a bag of weed in the other. But I got away. So, you know, I'm thinking I can do this. It wasn't my weed, but Mrs. Noonan, it wasn't my weed. I was just holding it for a friend. So I figured all I needed to do was write a really compelling letter, get a really, you know, kick-ass pair of shoes so I'd at least look the part, and buy like a bunch of Gatorade, you know, whatever. I don't know what runners do, they get Gatorade. So, you know, Ireland, here I come. So the very next day, I'm out on the corner of Santa Monica and Henry Clay, and I'm like, you know, getting ready to start my run. My goal was to run down to Osco, which is what, about 6 blocks away. And I was gonna like pick up a pack of smokes. I'm stretching, and I start running. By the time I get to the corner of Santa Monica and like Chateau, I'm like, I'm kissing Ireland goodbye. I'm like, oh my God, there's no way. So I turn around and I'm walking home, and I'm thinking, when was that Rome Marathon? And Rome was 5 months later in March. So I'm like, they got cool stuff in Rome too, right? They got like the Sistine Chapel and old things, the Vatican, that kind of stuff. So I went home and I poured myself a glass of wine and I opened a bag of Cheetos and I turned on Lifetime. and I set my sights on Italy. So the American Diabetes Association, they send out a training manual for the people who sign up for Team Diabetes, and this is it. I still have it. It was prepared especially for Julie. And I'm not a big, like, read the directions kind of gal, so I got this in the mail and I kind of chucked it on the coffee table and I let it sit there and kind of brew for a few months. And finally I got around to reading it. And you know, the funny thing about this training manual is that you would think that the training information on like how to run a marathon would be right up front. But all this stuff up front is about how to raise money and how to raise money and how to raise money. And the training information is way back here behind tab number 6. And there's some useful words here. They use words like purposeful, patient, persistent, and prudent. These are words you need to know if you're going to run a marathon. But I found out that there's a few other things that you might want to know when you're going to run a marathon. There's a whole bunch of shit that the real runners, the ones who are like skinny, and the ones whose thighs don't rub together, the ones whose like calves and ankles are separate entities, a whole bunch of shit those people don't tell people like me who are just posing in order to get a free trip to Europe. But I'm going to tell you all what happens. For example, this book doesn't say anything about the fact that you will lose a piece of skin this fine, right under your boobs. And you won't know it until you get in the shower and the hot water hits it, and then you'll be crying. They don't say anything about the boob thing. They don't say anything about the fact that you'll wake up one morning and your toenails will be at the bottom of your sheets. And I'm not talking about clippings. I mean your whole toenail. Gone. And they don't say anything about the fact that one day you might be running up, say, Lake Drive, and maybe you'll be in between like Capitol and, I don't know, maybe Olive. And you're being prudent, and you're being persistent, and you're being purposeful, and you're being patient, and all of a sudden your bowels, just like that, become extremely explosively persistent. You gotta get home. They don't say any of these things. So I actually did a little research when I was preparing for this story, because I wanted to find out what they say. You know, like, I don't know who they are, but they're on the internet, so I guess they're credible. What they say about running a marathon and how it will affect you. And they say things like, it'll change your life, it'll make you do things that you never thought you could do. I actually found one, it'll make you do things that you never thought you could do. I actually found one that said, it will provide physical and psychological salvation. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. I just want to get rid of my cankles. It's very seriously. So, a couple other things I learned. People in Wisconsin, especially on Lake Drive, they get sick of shoveling right about March 1st. And it's kind of tough to run down Lake Drive. Gatorade freezes pretty quickly. It's kind of hard to knock it out of that plastic thing on the sidewalk. It's tough to drink that when it's frozen solid. And the most important thing I learned, and you might want to listen if you're planning to run a marathon, the person who introduced the phrase runner's high into our vocabulary, they've never actually been high. So you know.